Broadly speaking, when we consider the U.S. and Israeli conflict with Iran, the head of Mossad says the mission has yet to be completed, that regime change has not yet happened. And I'm wondering to what extent President Trump will be in control of what takes place after next week. When this 2-week ceasefire is over, Ambassador, can the U.S. assume, if it's extended, that Israel will be along?
Hi, good to be with you, Joe. I think Israel is going to try to work in lockstep to the greatest degree possible with the Trump administration. So far, there's really been very little daylight between the two governments, and Israel will continue to do so. We could reach a situation where if the Trump administration reaches an agreement with Iran, which Israel would consider, let's say, challenging to our security. I'll give an example. If an example, what they're talking about in the press, a possible compromise where Iran would agree to freeze Iranian enrichment for a certain amount of time, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, Israel could say, well, at the end of that period, or even before that period, we won't be beholden to that agreement because if it's the same regime, then that regime could go back to enriching uranium to a weapons-grade level. If Iran gets sanctions relief and can then use that money to rebuild Hezbollah, to rebuild Hamas, Israel would have to respond to that. The most important thing for Israel right now is the Lebanese situation, and we're going to talk about the peace talks in Washington, which are a very favorable event indeed. But meanwhile, fighting on the northern front continues very heavily tonight with strong Hezbollah shelling of northern Israeli communities. This is not a security situation for the state of Israel. It's an existential situation for the state of Israel. If Hezbollah is not removed as that threat, nobody will live in the Galilee anymore. I guarantee it. We'll lose half this country very quickly.
Well, and Hezbollah, of course, did not have a seat at the table here in Washington for these initial conversations, Ambassador. If they're not present, what really can be accomplished by Israeli and Lebanese officials?
Well, Hezbollah is a branch of Iran. It's not representing Lebanon. It takes its orders from Tehran. It gets its weapons from Tehran, and it's shooting at the behest of Tehran tonight. And basically, the Lebanese ambassador there, operating as the plenipotentiary representative of the Lebanese government, is there against Hezbollah. That was what Marco Rubio talked about, is what the Israeli ambassador talked about, and what the Lebanese ambassador talked about. They were here in Washington, they're saying, to face a common threat. And that is the Iran-backed Hezbollah, which is dragging Lebanon into disastrous war after war, and it's got to stop. Now, the big question is, how does it stop? The Lebanese government, which I sincerely believe wants peace with Israel, we want peace with the Lebanese people, it doesn't have the power to overcome Hezbollah. It's one of the strongest non-government military forces, not just in the Middle East, but in the world still. And I don't think the United States wants to intervene in Lebanon again. It tried it about 40 years ago. You may remember the horrible terrorist attack against the Marine barracks there. So how then do you then neutralize the Hezbollah threat? There's really only one way, and that is by cutting off Iranian aid to Hezbollah. And that brings us back to Islamabad. That brings us back to Pakistan. And why Israel is so concerned about the possibility of sanction relief being offered to the Iranians as a quid pro quo for ending this war.
So you're talking about cutting off supplies, and it does sound like we're really getting to something here, Ambassador. If you cut off the money to Hezbollah, understood, but does the Israeli and United States alliance need to work to somehow strengthen the government of Lebanon so it has agency in these negotiations?
Definitely, but the Lebanese army cannot remotely compete with Hezbollah on a field of battle right now. Maybe
so how do you change that dynamic?
It is not going to be easy. It has to do with training. It has to do with investment, recruitment. And I think right now the best thing we can hope for, again, is like sort of letting Hezbollah wither on the vine. Now, here's the good news. The good news is that Syria is no longer under the thumb of Iran. And the Syrian leader today, Bashar Ahmed Shara, is trying to seal the Syrian border and preventing Iranian resupplies from reaching Hezbollah. Now, I don't know how successful he's going to be. It's a long long and difficult frontier. But that's one way of choking off Hezbollah. You have to choke off Hezbollah is also a source of funding around the world. Hezbollah is deeply, deeply involved in the drug trade and drug manufacturing in the United States, in South America, and we have to fight on that front as well. That's a task for the U.S. Treasury, the FBI, and other government agencies. We cooperate very closely with them. So it won't be easy. But at least we have now these peace talks between Israel and Lebanon. It's always a welcome event when you have these peace talks. And hopefully Lebanon will one day join the Abraham Accords. But we have to create the military strategic framework in which that peace can be fully realized.
Well, and so when we're considering a peace between Israel and Lebanon and how it factors into a wider peace between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, knowing Iran has set a precondition for any lasting agreement needs to be a cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Do you think that this is a situation that can resolve itself to pave the way forward for a near-term agreement, or is this necessarily going to have a much longer time horizon than President Trump would suggest he wants in terms of reaching an overall agreement with Iran?
Well, Kailey, this is sort of edging into speculation, but should their agreement be reached between the United States and Iran that has a component that says there has to be a ceasefire on the northern front, for Israel and for Israelis, the people in the north, in the Galilee, I think it's an area that's well known to a great number of Americans and precious, the Galilee, that'll be just a stopgap measure. It'll be something in the order of a Band-Aid, because we know that Hezbollah will always be there, always building up its rocket supplies, always preparing to perhaps cross the border, as Hamas did on October 7th, 2023. It has a terrorist force known as the Radwan Force. That is their goal, training to get across the border, taking over Israeli towns and communities and massacring their inhabitants. We know from their plans. We've captured them. So again, for us, it's not just a security issue. It is pretty much an existential issue. You lose half the country. And by the way, just last week, Hezbollah fired a rocket over our house here in Tel Aviv that hit a southern Israeli port, Ashdod. So you can fire a rocket in northern Lebanon by Hezbollah and hit southern Israel. So it's not just about the north of Israel, it's about the entire country.
Ambassador, President Trump has said repeatedly over the past couple of days that regime change has in fact happened in Iran. He referred to the new unknown leaders as more reasonable. Do you agree?
Well, I think the proof is going to have to be in the negotiating pudding. We'll see how reasonable they're going to be. As far as Israel is concerned, we are proceeding on the assumption that, yes, there's been a change of leadership, but not necessarily a change of regime, and that the new leaders may, in fact, actually be more hardline than the previous leaders. It's hard to imagine, but it could be. And you could have a situation before you were getting Iran was being run by religious clerics, and now it could be run by a military junta from the IRGC. We don't know. I don't think anybody has the answer to that. The proof is going to be whether or not Iran will blink first. It appears like they blinked in reaction to the American naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and gone back to Islamabad, go back to the talks. But we have to see whether Iran will actually show flexibility in these talks. And here the barometers are very clear, because will Iran give up its nuclear program? Will it stop enriching uranium? Will it give up the stockpile of highly enriched uranium to 60%, very close to weapons grade, 900 pounds of it, enough to make 10 or 11 nuclear bombs? Will it give it up and let it be shipped abroad? Will Iran stop supporting terrorist groups around the Middle East? And ultimately, will it give up its long-range ballistic missile program? Those missiles now can hit Central Europe. These are all going to be, the red lines of the president. They are barometers, and Israel will be watching it very, very closely. We certainly subscribe to those red lines.